Democrats are fighting to end the filibuster, and many are seeing Majority Whip James Clyburn leading this charge. There's been a renewed sense of urgency to end it, and Clyburn has not wavered in his distaste for it. In fact, recently he started to push even harder and get people to understand while it might not happen overnight, and this is a fight that we have to be committed to in the long haul, he says that it's worth the fight. Take a listen to what he had to say recently when he was asked about the filibuster.
Yes, the filibuster. I'm like, I think it's a relic of the Jim Crow era and should be gotten rid of. However, if you can't do it in one fell swoop, do it as we did the Civil Rights Act. We got the Civil Rights Act passed in 1964, and we didn't get the voting rights until 65. We didn't get a fair housing law until 68. And none of it will apply to the public sector as it relates to employment until 1972. So for an 8-year period, we did that. So I would hope that's what Rahm Emanuel was talking about. I certainly think of it that way. I thought the same thing we were passing the Affordable Care Act, and I said so at the time. So that's not a substitute for, that should be in addition to.
And Ben, I know that this is something that you've done extensive coverage on. Do you know why all of a sudden there's this renewed sense of urgency to end the filibuster?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's literally aligned with everything that that we've been covering for some time. The constant attack on the voting rights of Black people specifically. I want to be sure about that. The rights that are being targeted disproportionately by Republicans all across this country are the voting rights of Black people and our ability to secure the future against the conservative movement. And they saw how we came out in January of 2021 for the special election in Georgia for Ossoff, John Ossoff, and Reverend Raphael Warnock in the state of Georgia, and won. They saw how we came out in 2020, in November of 2020, and defeated Donald Trump. And so they are doubling and tripling down all across the country to ensure that they make it more difficult for us to go out and vote. And if the Senate Democrats do not do away with the filibuster, then we are going to see these pieces of legislation that passed all around the country stand. And then so by the midterms of 2022, that means Republicans across this country would have taken every step humanly possible to prevent Black people from voting and securing our political power. So it is incumbent upon Democrats in the Senate to do away with the filibuster. What Clyburn is talking about there is making an exception, like a carve out. And so we can get into the particulars of his strategy versus like the real strategy of getting rid of the filibuster altogether. But he is making an effort to try to secure the voting rights of Black people across this country.
Yeah, and I'd love for you to elaborate on that. From my understanding and in hearing the whole conversation, because I know we only played a clip, in terms of the filibuster amending the Constitution, he was saying he was against that, but in certain situations of reconciliation, it wasn't that big of a deal. But from your perspective, what is it going to take in order for this to be done away with?
Yeah, we're still dealing with Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, and I think they are just two of probably about 8 Democrats in the Senate Democrats who will stand in the way of doing away with the filibuster, because they are putting up this fear, this false alternative, this false choice between the filibuster and democracy. Took me a second to get it out, but that's exactly what Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema are doing. They're creating a false choice between the filibuster and democracy. What they're not telling us is that on the opposite side of their choice is democracy. What Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema and a couple of other Senate Democrats are doing, they're saying that it is more important to them that they secure the institution of the filibuster, which is not constitutional, mind you. It is not constitutional. Right. It is a Senate rule. And they're saying they are choosing a Senate rule over democracy itself. And so Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, they are a serious problem, and they are not a problem that we should forget. If they stand in the way of us getting rid of the filibuster, we need to hold that grudge until it's time to vote them out of power.
Well, in some regard, it just feels like it is an extension, a strategy extension of what we saw on January 6th. It feels like a direct attack on our democracy.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. I love how you just framed that, right? Because it shows us that Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema are literally on the wrong side of history here. Any Democrat who is standing in the way of us doing away with the filibuster altogether, because Republicans have shown that they are masters of using the filibuster to stop progress and to get what they want. They will use a filibuster when it suits them, and then they will ignore the filibuster when it suits them. This is how they pass using reconciliation. This is how they passed the tax breaks of 2017, which gave trillions of dollars to corporate America and to billionaires. Right? They ignored the filibuster. Then they didn't care, but now they're pretending like it's the most sacred and hallowed institution. Therefore, it is directly tied with the tactics of the Republican Party and their attempt to overthrow democracy by any means necessary. If democracy stands in the way of Republican and conservative power, they will overthrow democracy. Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin are in league with that because they're standing in the way of us getting rid of the filibuster.
You know, the last thing I wanted to address here, I thought it was very interesting that Majority Whip Clyburn talked about the process in which the civil rights era unfolded. And so in 64 and 65 and 68. And I feel like with our generation and younger generations, you know, some of us don't quite understand that it's a marathon, right? And that it's not something that's going to happen in one year, in one election, that in order for us to truly see an end of the attack on our voting rights, in order for us to see the police accountability that we've been pushing for, in order for us to see the change that we have been advocating for our liberation, as you said, is going to take more than just 1 or 2 years of pushing. And I thought that was great perspective from Clyburn.
I think he's partially right and he's partially wrong. I agree with you on the part that he's right on. This is a marathon. It really is. And I would, notwithstanding Clyburn, I would extend that same sentiment towards everyone. We can't get in this fight expecting to get quick results because the way this institution, you got to think of America as a giant freighter on the ocean. It takes a lot of energy to move this vessel towards the left or the right. But what we've seen in this country is that Republicans have mastered the art of grabbing the wheel of this democracy and hitting it hard right, not concerned whatsoever about the damage that it does to the entire institution. And so the way I disagree with Clyburn is that Republicans are not taking their time with what they want. So we cannot afford to think that the right strategy is to intentionally take our time because it previously took us a long time. It is not taking Republicans a long time to get these tax breaks. It didn't take Donald Trump a long time to stack the courts. It didn't take Republicans a long time to execute their 50-state strategy to get rid of voting rights for Black people. So we cannot simultaneously expect for us to be able to respond in kind if we are taking a backseat kind of, laissez-faire approach. Let's give it time. Republicans aren't giving us time to triangulate. We got to fight.
I love that analysis, and I think that's part of the reason why I was frustrated when you look up. It's been a year since George Floyd was killed, and there's the George Floyd Policing Act still hasn't passed. Because it can be done, and we've seen it done for other issues, but unfortunately, when it's issues pertaining specifically to the Black community, it seems like we get pushed to the back burner.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are always asked as Black people in this country to be patient. Patience is a virtue. I need to encourage people to the left of me to understand that this is a long, protracted fight. But I think I also want us to realize where we are in that fight. We cannot fight with the mindset of 1964, 1965, 1968, 1972, as Clyburn. Those fights were valiant. They did tremendous things for Black people in each and every one of those iterations that Clyburn mentioned. However, we are not in 1964, 65. We're in 2021. And in this year, Republicans are perfectly okay with more than 600,000 people dying from COVID-19. In fact, that's not enough. They're still pushing to end all mask mandates around the country. So we're dealing with sociopaths. I know we were dealing with racists in 65, But we're dealing with sociopathic racists in 2021 that are willing to see this entire country burn and march up the steps of the Capitol on January 6th. I think we need a little bit more urgency, the sense of urgency, the urgency of now.
Absolutely. Well, I want to pivot here. There was a new ruling that came down from a judge regarding the federal DACA program. Take a listen at some of the changes that are being pushed through now.
Federal judge in Texas ordering the government to stop accepting new applications for the DACA program, which protects young undocumented immigrants who came to the U.S. as children. The judge calling the program illegal and ruling that the Obama administration did not have the legal authority to launch it. The program offers work permits and protection from deportation. The ruling does not immediately affect the 616,000 DACA recipients who are currently enrolled.
Now, we've seen the number of arrests at the U.S.-Mexico border reach its highest level in more than a decade. So an increase in arrests. In addition to that, I thought it was interesting. The judge who made this ruling was appointed by the Bush administration. And we know that Biden, to some degree, has some allegiance and alliance for the programs that were put in place by the Obama administration since he was a part of it. And this was one that they advocated for a lot. And so this is a blow to Biden. But more importantly, when you look at the fundamentals of America, the fact that this was a country that was founded on immigration, right? People who weren't from here coming here. And so every time that I see rulings that are made or a push to end immigration, especially when you're talking about children, it feels like it is contradicting the foundation of our country.
Oh yeah. See, I was I'm looking up a little bit more information on Judge Andrew Hannon, and that's the judge that made this ruling. It's a 5-page ruling, basically saying that you already went over it. They have no problem with that hypocrisy. How many white Americans, European Americans came through Ellis Island without any difficulty whatsoever? At that time, they cherished the idea of give us your tired, your huddled masses that's enshrined on the side of the Statue of Liberty. But now, once the hue and the complexion and the melanin in the immigrants started to change, then all of a sudden it changed from give us your tired and huddled masses to stay away. This is hypocrisy. It is an effort by Republicans and conservatives. And I want to make one distinction here. This is not all Republicans, not all conservatives, but I find quite an overlap in the Venn diagram between conservatism, republicanism, and white supremacy. And this is their effort to make sure that this country does not brown sufficiently.
Yeah.
They want to make sure that this country stays white because they understand the numbers game and they understand how democracy works, which is why they're willing to toss away democracy if they must.
And the thing about this program is it is a protective mechanism for people who are brought here under the age of 16. And think about that. If you're under the age of 16 and you're in America, you were brought here by your parents. You didn't really come here by choice, right? And so why should children be penalized? And so I think, to me, when there's a tax against other forms of immigration, that's one thing. But this feels like something totally different when you're attacking children who didn't really have a choice to come here in the first place. And sometimes you're talking about kids who are 2, 3, 4, 5, who've been here 2 decades. And then they're pushed out. They're just as much Americans as we are. And so it just feels like having this program in place, it makes sense and it gives people an opportunity to truly gain their citizenship. Go ahead. What are your thoughts on that?
I think when you look at the targets of this, one, Joe Biden is going to appeal this, which is the right thing to do, obviously. To target the children, it is to say that we want to undermine the very concept in your mind of being able to get some stability and some refuge from the very countries that the United States has been involved in undermining and destabilizing. You got to understand, a lot of people who come to this country from Central and South America, they're coming here because of American foreign policy. Let's be clear. The reason their countries are destabilized in so many cases, not every single one, but in too many cases, we've seen their countries and their nations be destabilized. And so parents have to flee because of American foreign policy. And they make the rational decision of, if the American empire is obliterating and destabilizing our countries abroad, then let's go to the American empire and get some refuge. And what these monsters are saying is, not only do we want to destabilize your nation, we want to make you so uncomfortable that you don't even think about coming here. And we're going to make it that uncomfortable by targeting your children. That is monstrous.
Absolutely. And what bothers me too is, the media is a powerful tool. And I feel like on this issue specifically, we have not seen enough coverage, enough real coverage of what's truly happening on our border.
Yeah.
And I say that because I have a few friends who are independent journalists who have truly covered this issue. And it is horrific. When you start investigating the conditions in which children were put in, who were being held at the border and separated with their parents, we've seen little bits of it surface, but we haven't really seen what's happening there on a day-to-day basis. And so what it does is it allows Americans to put this issue in the back of their mind, go to work and go to school and live their life like none of this is happening. But it's horrific. And if you have children, if you're a parent, could you imagine your child being separated from you and how that would break their spirit, the fear, the terror that they would feel, and the trauma that they would endure for the rest of their life, the separation anxiety that would never cease. That would be something that they would carry even into their adulthood, into relationships in their adulthood. And so for me, what frustrates me on this issue is not only are we seeing this judge make this ruling against it, but really this has been an issue that our country has really failed to deal with in many ways, but that has largely been covered up because media hasn't been given access to the way, the conditions in which people are being forced into when they're trying to come here.
I'm thinking back to what Brother Anthony Galloway said last week, and he said it in pertains to the video we were watching of the Karen in the Walmart lobby who was making it difficult for a black man, putting his life at risk. And he framed it by saying that sometimes we, even as black people or as Americans, we don't realize how we can become and are or have been complicit with the very systems that oppress us through, watch this, not giving enough attention and detail to what America is doing to other people. And that's what you're saying, Georgia. What you're saying is that what's happening at the border, or at least what I believe I hear you saying, is that what's happening at the border is so uncovered in the minds of the American people that we're completely oblivious to what our country is doing to these families and to the trauma, the lifelong trauma that it's causing. Now, juxtapose that with what we're doing in their countries. Juxtapose that with what we're doing across in the Middle East. There's so many things that this country does that the American people are oblivious to because we're so consumed, not only with entertainment. I don't want to insult the American people here because I need you to hear me. They have us so consumed with just trying to survive, living paycheck to paycheck, struggling, scratching and surviving. Good time. They have us so tied up with struggling to survive that we don't realize what this country is doing, not only at our border, but overseas.
And I'm glad that you brought that quote up by Brother Galloway, because I felt convicted when I heard it. I tend to have a hyper focus on certain things, and every now and then we have to look in the mirror and we need to self-reflect, and we need to be self-aware of what our shortcomings are. And the reality of it is, if we're not educating ourselves, if we're not extending the issues that we're paying attention to and researching, then we actually become a part of the problem.
That's it.
Right? If we're
That's
not a
it.
part of the solution, we become a part of the problem. Or if we're complicit, if these things are happening and we're not doing anything, we're not saying anything, then we're complicit. So I think that is something that we should continue to keep front and center, because there are a lot of privileges that we have in being American, that we take for granted even. But the other thing that when I start really going down that path and exploring that idea, it makes me think about the quote by MLK of I fear I integrated my people into a burning house.
Yes.
Because Ben,
Yes.
when you start talking about the presence of America in other countries and the pain that we're inflicting on other people, it, you know, what is America?
Oh,
And
I'm sorry. That's a hell of a question to ask somebody like you and me, Georgia. Go ahead.
what is America? And it just, are you really proud? Are you really proud to be American? And if you went in other parts of this world, not in this country, but if you go outside of this country and you go ask other people about this nation, would you walk away from those conversations truly being proud to be American?
Let's do it like this. Now, I want to preface this because I'm going to say a whole bunch of stuff here, but I'm going to preface this by saying I was properly indoctrinated by America. I was propagandized by America. I know the Constitution, the preamble by memory. I learned it in second grade. It said Pledge Allegiance, all that good stuff. I tried to be proud to be an American. But when we consider what this country does abroad, we got to understand from the perspective of the people who are on the receiving end of American foreign policy, we are not the Jedi. We are the Sith Lords. We are not the rebellion. We are Darth Vader and the Galactic Empire. We are the bad guys on the international stage in so many instances. And if you don't feel like that, if that is too uncomfortable for someone, then you really need to ask us about our foreign policy as it pertains to Yemen, right? The starvation that is happening through our proxy, Saudi Arabia, is being okayed by America. Now, we used to get so involved under Donald Trump that we were giving them logistic support, we were giving them weapon support, and then Joe Biden came in and said, okay, well, that's a little too far because we've seen too many emaciated babies on television, so let's get rid of the logistical support, but we haven't told Saudi Arabia to stand down. There's about, I believe the number is well into the hundreds of thousands of children who would die in Yemen this year. Now, ask the people of Yemen what they think about America, because we empowered Saudi Arabia, and I haven't even gone to Iraq or Afghanistan. Yeah, but God bless America, though. You know, I want to dovetail it with this. I live in this empire. My children are growing in this empire. When I say God bless America, I don't say God bless American foreign policy. I say God bless America because I need it to work. I need it to work for the sake of my children. And so I cannot have it work for the sake of my children if it's coming at the expense of other children. See, anyway, we got it.
It's too much power. It's too much power. But yes, we could go on and on about this. We are on the clock, however. So we will end the conversation here. Thank you so much to those who are listening, and make sure that you stick around for more on the Benjamin Dixon Show.